Consul General of India in Frankfurt, Dr. Mrityunjay, our distinguished speakers for today's event, members of our community and friends of India who are joining us through our Facebook page, my colleagues Shri Ramkumar and Shri Ajaynath Oja. A very warm welcome to this virtual event that we are having to celebrate the birth anniversary of Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose. We know this day as Parakram Diwas. So we will begin the ceremony by offering the floral tribute to Netaji. So I would request Consul General to please give the floral tribute to Netaji. Now, before I invite Consul General for his welcome remark, I would like to introduce our distinguished guest for the event. We have with us Ms. Piyali Bhaumik. Ms. Piyali Bhaumik works as an IT security architect and product security lead at the Deutsche Börse. She is also the coordinator of the Indian community group called Bengalis in Hessen Rhine-Main Area Group, BHRM, which is a Bengali and Indian cultural exchange group, a very active Indian community association. We have with us Mr. Krishnendu Laha. Mr. Laha lives in Düsseldorf and works and is working with Cognizant as Salesforce delivery lead. He is a very active member of our community in NRW and is currently the president of Indian Cultural Club for Heritage and Entertainment. A very active association for us. We also welcome Mr. Mrityunjay Das. Mr. Das is engineer by profession and works for Ericsson. Mr. Das is also a board member of Indisch Gemeinde in Düsseldorf and is associated with NGOs working for social causes such as child malnutrition, child abuse, child labor, and child trafficking, etc. We also welcome Mr. Karthik Yadiki. Mr. Karthik Yadiki is a mechanical engineer and currently working as managing consultant for SAP. He's been living in Germany for last 10 years. He's also a volunteer teacher for Balagokulam. So a very warm welcome to all our guests, and we are looking forward to a very informative and very thoughtful remarks on this important day. Before we invite our guests to speak, I would like to request Consul General for his opening remarks, please.
Namaskar.
Namaskar.
My colleague Mr. Ram Singh Chauhan, other colleagues Shri Ajaynath Oja and Shri Ramkumar, our distinguished panelists, Mr. Shankar Singha. Unfortunately, Mr. Singha is encountering some technical difficulties, but I am sure he is going to join in a short while. Mr. Krishnendu Laha, Mr. Mrityunjay Das, Ms. Piyali Bhaumik, and Mr. Karthik Yadiki. A very warm welcome to all of you, and thank you very much for joining us for this event today. It is indeed a very a matter of great pride and privilege for me to welcome all of you to this event as we celebrate 125th birth anniversary of Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose, a patriot, a freedom fighter, and a person who has contributed immensely to India's freedom struggle as we celebrate 75 years of India's independence. Besides Netaji's 125th birth anniversary, this whole year we are also commemorating the 75 years of India's independence, and a series of activities have been organized by the Consulate General of India in Frankfurt with immense support and contribution of various Indian community organizations in Germany, and especially under the jurisdiction of Consulate General of India in Frankfurt. So we are extremely thankful to all the Indian organizations and community associations. In fact, as my colleague Ram Singh Chauhan just mentioned, we have 4 very distinguished members or panelists who are going to speak about Netaji, his contribution, and also about the contribution of various other freedom fighters who, under the leadership of Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose, contributed to India's freedom struggle. As we speak today, all of you would have seen that Government of India has decided to celebrate this important occasion as Parakram Diwas. And this Parakram Diwas also is of great significance because there are many people, many unsung heroes as we call them, of our freedom struggle, who contributed in various ways to our freedom struggle. Some of them participated in various movements which were within India, but there were also many people who were not residing in India at that time, but still their heart was beating for India's independence, and all of them also contributed in their own way to the independence movement. I think Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose is one of the pivotal figures, and under his INA or the Indian National Army or Azad Hind Fauj, there were many other contributors who played a very significant role in India's freedom struggle. So I think today is the occasion not only to pay tribute to Netaji, but also to all his comrades, all his, I would say, friends, and who joined the Indian National Army and contributed with their lives for the cause of India's independence. So with these words, I once again thank all of you. I extend my warmest greetings to all of you, and I'm really looking forward to a very, I would say, interesting discussion, not only about Netaji's contribution, but also as we pay our tribute to all those freedom fighters who have contributed to our freedom struggles, and because of their work, their hard work, their dedication, and their sacrifice, we celebrate India's freedom and India's independence. Thank you very much, and I hand over to my colleague Ram Singh Chauhan for the further proceedings.
Thank you very much, sir. We hope that Mr. Sankar Sinha will join us. He'll be able to join us shortly. And meanwhile, we'll like to invite other speakers to speak. And I would request Shri Ajaynath Ojaji to please take charge of coordinating with the speakers and inviting them to speak one by one.
Thanks, Ramji. Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose had a multifaceted involvement in the Indian freedom struggle. From the mainstream of Indian Congress to the formation of INA and leveraging real politics of Second World War for the goal of Indian freedom, independence or freedom. He worked towards the national cause while sacrificing multiple opportunities of occupying political office and serving as an ICS officer. His never say die attitude makes him a very influential figure in Indian history. Today we have distinguished guests who will speak on various aspects of life of Netaji. First, I would like to invite Mr. Krishnendu Laha to present his views on the life of Netaji. Mr. Krishnendu Laha.
Thank you, Mr. Roger. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. So I first of all, I thank you, the Indian Embassy at Frankfurt, to give the opportunity to speak about from the life of a great leader like Subhash Chandra Bose. So I, in this next minutes, would like to focus on some of the aspects from his life, from his events, which actually having a lessons for us from a management view and perspective, and what we can learn in this era of this challenging corporate scenario where we are struggling with engaging with our employees and also bringing out the top vision from the top to down to all the employees level. So Netaji means respected leader, the name granted to him in the early 1942s by the Indian soldiers of the Indice Legion, or we call it Free India Legion, and by the German and Indian officials in the Special Bureau for India in Berlin. It was later used throughout India because of his heroic efforts in the Indian freedom struggle. We have a lot to learn from his leadership skills, which is mixed with excellent communication and emotional engagement, and capable of bringing down the message from top to bottom. Today, as I spoke, in this era of random changes, the leaders are facing challenges with the translate of their vision to all employees and connecting them through emotional perspective. We can learn a lot from Subhash Chandra Bose's life. In the next few minutes, I would like to highlight few of his thoughts, events, and actions from his life, which highlight how big leader he was. The first perspective is that people engagement. As you remember, before 1941, for about 200 years, Indian citizens were working in army with pride, serving a power that was killing and exploiting their own countrymen. Getting these people to break their oath, which was given to the British king and the king's army, and fight against them for the sake of the country's freedom was indeed a huge accomplishment. It was possible with his convincing and razor-sharp communication skill. The second perspective I would like to give from the perspective of reading the trends. So how he was thinking ahead of the time. So way back in 1938, almost a year before the Second World War broke, it was actually 1939 when the Second World War broke out, Netaji had openly advocated siding with the enemies, I would say here, of Britain in the event of war. I want to say it again. That is a foresight. He was a leader who has the ability to understand global affairs in depth and was excellent in reading the emerging trends which is coming in advance in the future and what you have to do. This is one skill every businessman needs to learn. The third one I would like to focus is citing the opportunity. I mean, whenever we have the opportunity, we should take forward and make a big effort to take that opportunity. He has done it. I would like to highlight one of that such event. So in the Raj rule, when the war broke out in 1939, they have not wasted a single minute to put him in a jail. So he was under house arrest when war broke out in 1939. And he was already politically sidelined and betrayed. But he did not go into a self-depreciating and defeated mode. He started work on his objective, thinking again how the objective aim and vision can be achieved, and ultimately orchestrated one of the most daring escapes in modern history to reach Germany and seek German help for the Indian independence war. In another perspective, I would like to highlight the negotiation skills, how big he was a leader to negotiate. So when he came to Germany, he knows that Germany was a de facto power in the Axis Pact. He had learned this from his friends and colleagues in when he was in Afghanistan, in Kabul. So he came to Germany and he talked to the leaders of at that time in Germany and negotiated in that way that at that time the Indian people who was captured by German in Africa did not become another foreign unit fighting for the Axis. Rather than they should fight for the cause of the Indian independence. And it was followed till the end, and they were only fighting or fighted for the Indian independence from that perspective. I mean, you think that in 1941, on that perspective, I mean, how was the power he was negotiated in that way? Yeah. The last, or I would not, if I have to say, we have a lot of things, but for the sake of time, I would like to focus on the last perspective in my speech is the women empowerment. At a time when many countries, including India, have stayed away from inducting women in combat roles. Netaji had raised the Rani Jhansi regiment comprising women officers and soldiers. He has given a lot of freedom to Captain Lakshmi Swaminathan to lead from front. Netaji gave command responsibility to women much before India inclusive opened its doors to women managers and directors. With this, again, I would like to give opportunity to my colleagues who are going to speak. I would like to end my short speech on Subhash Chandra Bose's leadership skills, and hopefully we are able to learn something from this great leader. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Laha,
You're welcome.
for highlighting the leadership skills, negotiating skills, and the original skills of Netaji. You mentioned the name of Captain Lakshmi Sehgal. I would like to add one point here. Once asked to Ms. Sehgal about the leadership qualities of Netaji, one journalist asked that how Netaji was able to manage the problems of each and every individual who was in INA. She smiled and told, Netaji was knowing the name of each and every soldier, and he was aware of his physical as well as the mental and the domestic problems. That was the quality of the Netaji.
Wow.
Thanks, Mr. Laha. Now I would like to invite Mr. Mrityunjay Das.
Mr. Singha has a chance.
Achha, Mr. Singha, are you?
No, sir.
Sorry, still he is having some technical problem. So I would like to invite Mr. Mrityunjay Das to express his views on Netaji.
Thank you, sir. First of all, I would like to ask you that can I speak in Hindi? Because yeah, so
जरूर आप बोले हिंदी में.
तो मेरा हिंदी उतना शुद्ध नहीं है, बट फिर भी माफी मांगूंगा. बट इतने बड़े जब नेशनलिस्ट नेता के बारे में बात कर रहे हैं तो हिंदी में बात करना आई थिंक ये मुझे लगता है कि उनके विचारधारा के अनुसार है, तो मैं हिंदी में बात करना चाहता हूँ. पहले तो मैं उनका 125वीं जन्म दिवस पे उनको शतकोटि नमन देना चाहता हूँ. और उसका जो फ्रीडम जो इंडियन पूर्ण स्वराज के लिए उनका जो अपना अवदान है उसको हम लोग तो सब जानते हैं. तो बट इस बारे में मैं इस दिन 2-3 जो पॉइंट है वो मैं हाईलाइट करना चाहता हूँ, जो आज का दिन में बहुत ज़्यादा इम्पोर्टेंट है. जब हम लोग नेताजी के बारे में बात करते हैं तो हमें हमेशा बहुत सारे मिस इन्फॉर्मेशन भी आते हैं जो गांधी जी और नेताजी के बारे में हम लोग इन्फॉर्मेशन आते हैं. तो मैं उसके बारे में बात करना चाहता हूँ. जो ये दोनों के बीच में इतने ज्यादा मतलब एक कुछ पॉइंट में मतभेद थे, जो आइडियोलॉजिकल डिफरेंसेस थे, बट ये छोड़ के भी इनके बीच में आइडियोलॉजिकल सिमिलरिटीज भी थे. तो दैट इज मोस्ट इम्पोर्टेंट. स्पेशली जो समाजवाद और धर्मनिरपेक्षता की जो आइडियोलॉजी थे वो समान थे और एक दूसरे के अंदर जो सम्मान थे. जो जब नेताजी ने आजादी फौज की स्थापना किए थे तो उसमें बहुत सारे ब्रिगेड उसने स्थापना किए थे. उसमें से 3 ब्रिगेड का नाम मैं यहाँ पर बोलना चाहता हूँ जो दिखाता है एक दूसरे के बीच में कितना सम्मान होते थे. तो एक है जैसे उसका 3 ब्रिगेड के अंदर एक ब्रिगेड था, उसका नाम था गांधी ब्रिगेड, दूसरा था नेहरू ब्रिगेड, तीसरा था मौलाना अबुल कलाम आजाद ब्रिगेड. और जैसे कृष्णेंदु ने बोला कि उसने नारी शक्ति को जो इन्वॉल्व किए, उसने सरोजिनी नायडू ब्रिगेड, झांसी ईरानी लक्ष्मीबाई ब्रिगेड, जो ये थे तो ये उनका जो उच्च विचार थे एक दूसरे के ऊपर, ये उसको प्रूव करता है, ये उसको प्रमाण देता है। दूसरा बात ये बोलूंगा, जैसे उसने जब सिंगापुर में जब वो आजादी हिंद रेडियो से नेशन को संबोधित किए थे, भारतवासी को संबोधित किए थे, तब 6 जुलाई उसने गांधी जी को फादर ऑफ द नेशन कहा। तो ये कितने बड़े नेता होते हैं कि जो अपने आइडियोलॉजिकल डिफरेंसेस होने के बावजूद एक दूसरे के ऊपर सम्मान, ये एक बड़े नेता कर सकते हैं। दूसरा है कि मतलब दूसरे तरफ गांधी जी भी हमेशा बोलते हैं कि नेताजी को प्रिंस ऑफ पैट्रियट। सो ये जो सम्मान है एक दूसरे के ऊपर, ये हमारा आज के देश में ये बहुत जरूरी है। एक दूसरे के अपनाओं को समझना, मतभेद हो सकता है आइडियोलॉजिकल, बट उसको एक दूसरे को रिस्पेक्ट करना ये बहुत ही जरूरी है आज का डेट में। तो ये है। अब मैं इस बारे में और भी बोलूंगा। जब वो 1945 में जब हमारा जब नेताजी आई होप फॉर, मतलब जब हम लोग की नेताजी शायद उनका देहांत हुआ, तो मुखर्जी कमीशन ने 2005 में बोले थे कि नहीं है, तो the previous 2 commissions said that it was that he died on the plane crash, but मुखर्जी कमीशन, बट गांधी जब 1947 में इंडिपेंडेंस हुआ और बंगाल का पार्टीशन हुए, तब गांधी जी ने एक चीज नेताजी के बारे में बोले थे कि आज मेरा बेटा नेताजी को सुभाष होता तो शायद ये पार्टीशन नहीं होता। तो ये एक दूसरे के ऊपर रिस्पेक्ट है, और ये तो बोलना मतलब ये मतलब इट्स ऑलरेडी प्रूव दैट विदाउट नेताजी, मतलब नेताजी के छोड़ के हमारा इंडिपेंडेंट पूर्ण स्वराज शायद ना मिलता। तो उनका कंट्रीब्यूशन हमें उनका जो विचारधारा है, समाजवाद और धर्मनिरपेक्षता और गरीबों के हेल्प करना, जो उसने जो विवेकानंद से उसको बहुत छोटे उम्र में स्वामी विवेकानंद से मोटिवेट होके जो अपना जोगी के तरह अपना विचार का जीवन बिताया, वो हमें सीखना चाहिए और हमें उसका आइडियोलॉजी में खुद को इवॉल्व करना है और ऐसे नेशन को बिल्ड करना है। नमस्कार, थैंक यू।
धन्यवाद मृत्युंजय जी, आपने हमारे स्वतंत्रता आंदोलन के दौरान हमारे वरिष्ठ नेताओं के मानवीय मूल्यों और तत्वों के बारे में और आपसी सामंजस्य और एक दूसरे के प्रति विचारों के बारे में हमें अवगत कराया। यह उन नेताओं के उदात्त और बेहद व्यक्तित्व के परिचायक हैं। वैचारिक मतभेद अपनी जगह पर व्यक्ति के रूप में एक दूसरे के प्रति उनका आदर, गांधी जी का उनको प्रिंस ऑफ पैट्रियटिज्म या गांधी जी के लिए सुभाष जी द्वारा फादर ऑफ नेशन कहना इस चीज को साबित करता है कि वैचारिक मतभेद कभी भी वैचारिक वैमनस्य में नहीं बदला। यह उनके व्यक्तित्व की महानता का द्योतक है। धन्यवाद, आपने मानवीय मूल्यों के बारे में जिक्र किया। अब मैं नाउ आई वुड लाइक टू मूव फॉरवर्ड and like to invite Miss Piyali Bhaumik. Miss Piyali Bhaumik.
Thank you, CGI Frankfurt, the team of Consul General Frankfurt for organizing this great opportunity of interaction, and so that we come together and talk about Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose, the legendary freedom fighter. I think the time today will not be sufficient to highlight the great aspects of his deeds. But I am a public speaker and a communicator as well, and I belong to Toastmasters International, this community where we train at leadership, communication, public speaking, and I have around 21 clubs following me in the Rhine-Main region. Why am I talking about this aspect is because I can remember there are n number of occasions where I cited Subhash Chandra Bose's quotes, his life lessons, because his words that bound us, the attributes of a leader are the great speeches that they give to bound people together. And one such is that Netaji once said, life loses half of its interest if there is no struggle, if there are no risks to be taken. As we stand in the midst of COVID today, I think each and every one of us have experienced the truth of this saying. And I believe that for every person, the ideology he or she follows is laid in the very foundation, namely in his or her childhood. So I would like to touch upon some of the aspects of Netaji's childhood, which probably might be able to tell us why he is such a great leader, why he chose or followed this path. So we know he was born in a very well-to-do family of great lawyer Janakinath Bose and mother Prabhavati Bose in Cuttack, Orissa, which was a part of British Raj India and was the Orissa division of the Bengal province in British India. Now, his father was very inclined towards, because he was an employee of the British Raj, so he was very much inclined towards British educational system, British discipline. And young Bose was sent to the Ravenshaw Collegiate School in Cuttack, which did not have anything other than European languages that were taught. But young Subhas got to know about the Vedas, the Upanishads, from his mother. He saw the goddess Kali, the worship of Durga, and that is where his early leanings, his early lessons and inclination towards India, towards the Indian culture arose. Then at the age of 12, he was sent to the Ravenshaw Collegiate School, and there is where, first in the preliminary years, he was sent to the Baptist Missions Protestant School, which was European in style, and then at 12 years of age, he was sent to the Ravenshaw Collegiate School, and that school taught him about Sanskrit and Bengal. And it is there where he writes to his mother and says, and talks about Ramakrishna, Vivekananda, and talks about the great novel that had tremendous impact on his childhood, on his early life. He talked about the novel Anandamath by Bankim Chandra Chatterjee. Anandamath, as we know, talks about the sannyasi rebellion of the 18th century, and it is a patriotic novel, because the song Vande Mataram has taken its roots in that novel, was first published in that novel. So here we see exactly where the respect, the love for motherland India comes to Netaji in the form of these, the teachings of these great leaders, Ramakrishna, Vivekananda, Bankim Chandra Chatterjee. Now we know he gradually grows up and goes to college, and the famous Presidency College, and there we see he has bondings and associations with Hemant Kumar Sarkar, who is another young freedom fighter who is inclined, and his thoughts are towards the freedom of India. With him, he disappears on a quest, on a yogic quest, and we don't know much about this part of his life because his parents were always then getting scared about where is he? He just doesn't say and disappear with his friend. So you see the leader who is focused on his ideology, on the thing he wants to aspire, doesn't consider barriers on his way. So we can see that his focus, even at the young ages of his early life, like he's just a college guy of 17, 18, and he doesn't bother to go far away from his home with his friend for months, disappearing for months. And I think later, even though he's pushed by his parents or it's against his basic ideologies to go to London for the Indian Civil Service examination, and there we see this inner struggle that he has with himself in letters that he writes to his brother Subhash Chandra Bose and to his mother. In one such letter we see, I quote from the letter, "Moreover, it is not possible to serve one's country in the best and the fullest manner if one is chained onto civil service." Here we see, my dear friends, that roots of this intense patriotism has already taken a deep seat in him, whereby he finally quits the civil service and comes back to India. And that time we know his association with Chittaranjan Das, C.R. Das, helped him, motivated him to come back to India and to full-fledgedly join the Indian National Congress and take up patriotism and the struggle for fighting against British Raj India in its full-blown development. Now, these were some of the insights from his life, and I think at this hour, I would like to close and give over to my to CGI Frankfurt with one famous quote of Netaji. "Forget not that the greatest and the grievous of crime is to compromise with injustice and wrong. Remember the eternal law. You must give if you want to get." Thank you.
Thanks, Ms. Bhaumik, for enlightening us with the childhood activities of Netaji. Now I would like to move to Mr. Karthik Yadiki.
Azadi Ka Namaskar again from my side. Rawat aa rahi hai na?
Ji.
Brilliant. So, thank you, respected Consulate General, for the opportunity and organizing such events. We also saw recently from Swami Vivekananda's Yadiki, and now we have again one, which is nice because history is often his story, as we also heard sometimes. But the last year, the government of India declared Parakram Diwas to pay respect for Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose. So with such traditions, we can know more of several heroes and more of our own history. So I shall take a couple of instances from the Netaji's life and the significance to our life today in Germany. The first one would be in 1916 when Netaji was in his 20s and he was at his college, residency college. He was expelled from the college because he had protested against the professor, because the professor was mistreating the students, and he was against it because it's anti-Indian and it was not ethical. So he stood up against it. So the key thing we could note here is that such legend who stood up against the Indian right and the self-respect. What's today's significance for us in living in Germany? We don't have such problems. No? We are luckily enjoying the freedom fought by the great leaders. So, for me, the today's takeaway from this point on this story, it's not just when we have problem we come together, but we should stay together and always help each other to do good or seva to our Janma Bhumi or Punya Bhumi, what we say Bharat, or to our Karma Bhumi, which is Germany. So this is the takeaway from this point. I'll go to the second point now. The Azadi Fauj. My co-speaker already pointed out about the leadership qualities there. So a small note adding to this. So Netaji was the supreme commander of the Azadi Fauj. He was appointed as it in 1942. And then this was also representing a provisional government which had its own currency, code and civil code, which was becoming a very clear pain for the British. And there was much revolt against the masses. So his very famous and energizing verse, "Tum mujhe khoon do, main tumhe azadi dunga." Give me your blood, I will give you the freedom. Has stirred many minds who were suffering and accepting the pain under British rule. So that's, from this, what is the today's significance, I could say? That's to mesmerize and to make the people come out of such pain. It's networking. One thing I would say networking because in today's world we don't have such war or anything like that in our place, fortunately. It could be any Indian feline. All the people looking at the videos in the Facebook, don't be a number of a group from WhatsApp or anything, but be a member. Be an active member. Do whatever you can. Talk to your friend. Start networking. Stay connected. CGI is doing much excellent activities as well to make all the networks connected. So we have to be strong together. So in today's situations, I take away this message. And the last one, in 1945, we lost Netaji. So, but the spirit, courage, commitment, and the sacrifice he had for Azadi India has grown heavily and in millions of hearts of Indians and around the world. And even today, we have him in our hearts. For today's significance, to take away from here, I would actually quote a Telugu poem by great Raya Prolu Subbarao garu. So he has a poem for people who are living and how to respect the mother world, mother country. Ye deshamegina, endu kaalidina, ye peetamekkina, evvareduraina, pogadara nee talli bhoomi bharatini, nilupara nee jati nindu gauravam. I translate. Whichever country you go and wherever you land your feet, whichever position you and power you possess, who may ever be opposite to you or against you, praise your motherland Bharat and keep your community respect and pride high. Let that be really high. And may all of us living outside India live to this poem and stay forward. The last sentence from my side would be, an Indian can be outside India, but the India cannot be taken away from our heart and minds. So, thank you again for the opportunity, Consulate General Amit Talanji, and everyone organizing the event and keeping the Indian community intact and growing it stronger and stronger day by day. Thank you very much.
धन्यवाद कार्तिक जी। यह बिल्कुल सही है। पार्थिव शरीर जाता है, यादें नहीं जाती, और बड़े लोगों की यादें सदियों तक बनी रहती है। यही उनके बड़प्पन और उनके व्यक्तित्व का परिचायक होता है। हमारे आखिरी वक्ता शंकर सिंह जी किसी टेक्निकल वजह से हमसे नहीं जुड़ पाए, तो अब मैं अपने कलीग श्री राम सिंह जी को
Thank you, Azadi. Thank you all the speakers for a wonderful, insightful and very learning views that you have shared with us today on this Parakram Diwas event. Now I would request my colleague Shri Ram Kumar ji to give the thanking remarks and closing remarks from his side.
Thank you, Ram Singh ji. I, on behalf of the Consul General and the Consulate General of India, would like to thank everyone for coming together to celebrate the Parakram Diwas, which is celebrated on the birth anniversary of Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose. This year is even more special as it marks his 125th birth anniversary. I convey my heartfelt thanks to speakers of today's event, Mr. Krishnendu Laha, Mr. Mrityunjay Das, Ms. Piyali Bhaumik, and Mr. Karthik Yadiki for sharing their valuable inputs with the audience. We are very grateful to our speakers to take time out of their busy schedule for participating in this event. As our speaker rightly emphasized, the contribution of Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose to our nation are innumerable. One of his most quoted lines, as mentioned by Mr. Karthik, from a speech that Netaji delivered to the soldiers of Indian National Army तुम मुझे खून दो मैं तुम्हें आज़ादी दूंगा inspired many in the freedom struggle. Some of the quotations made by Mrs. Piyali is one of the famous is when we stand, the Azad Hind force has to be like a wall of granite. When we march, the Azad Hind force has to be like a steamroller. Few minutes is not sufficient to speak about the contribution of Netaji. One can learn many things from his life journey and they are very relevant for today's future generation too. Many people have also joined this celebration through Facebook Live, and I would like to thank all the viewers who are watching this event online, and of course team from the consulate whose contribution is very important to the success of this event. Jai Hind.
Jai Hind.
Jai Hind.
Jai Hind. With this, yes. So with this we have come to the closure of today's event. Thank you very much, everyone, and all our viewers who are joining us through Facebook. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Big round of applause for the spirit of Netaji.